again, my friends, and welcome back to my garden. The last garden video that I did, I showed you guys this area that I really hadn't used much. And now so in that video, I also planted some onions, and you can see that some of them are starting to come up, but so is the nutsedge, which I got to get out here and pull up because that will quickly take over. But my onions are doing great things, and I just wanted to share it with you that I have this area right here. I think I talked about this a little bit. I have this area right here where the grass is like completely gone, like it's gone. Look at that. It's That's not going to come back. So I've made an executive decision that I'm going to pull those bricks up right there underneath the lemongrass and bring the garden over just a wee bit more right here, so we don't have to deal with the dead grass and I can grow more food. So that's a garden chore I'm going to take on today. Um, and it probably will take me a couple of days actually. But in the meantime, I wanted to talk to you guys about a little topic that I mentioned in that last video, which was weeds. Before we get into it, let's talk about specifically what a weed is. Pretty straightforward, right? We all know what a weed is. It's something that you don't want growing in a particular spot. Um, However, I would caution you to be careful what you consider a weed. And the reason I say that is because, come over here with me back to this same area of the garden. I was trying to get out of the sun a little bit. Um, the reason I'm saying that is because many times we plant things that absolutely are not weeds. They may be beautiful, they may be something that we can eat, they may be medicinal, but they are invasive. And just because we did not know that they were invasive doesn't necessarily make them bad for you or your garden. Now, a weed is something different for every gardener. Every person is going to consider, one thing beautiful versus another thing. Case in point, I had some amaryllis growing up in my front bed. I think I showed that on the garden tour, the fall 2023 garden tour. And the amaryllis just took over because it grows by rhizomes underneath the ground. Unless you dig up the whole bed, you cannot get rid of the amaryllis. Now, they're beautiful. People love them for Christmas. I love them. When they bloom, they're amazing. Even the foliage is so pretty. But invasive takes over. Can't plant anything else around there unless you pull them all up. So that could be considered a weed by some people. Um, Another case in point, and I'm going to show you guys this. So, of course, in my backyard, pretty much everything back here is edible, including the flowers that I grow for pollinators. Um, However, a couple of years ago, I planted amaranth, not knowing what it was. I planted amaranth for the flowers specifically. Let me see if I can show y'all. Here's what it looks like on the seed packet. Very, very pretty. And I wanted those flowers. So the first year, I planted them around my entry and exit gate to the lake access. I wanted one on each side because I thought, oh, that would be so pretty, just kind of draping around the gate. Um, my flowers never looked like that, first of all. And then I had a neighbor, of course, we have open access right here. You see, people can just see right into my backyard. And people ask questions about what's growing and how did I get this to grow? How did I get that to grow? What is that thing over there? Never saw that before. That was the loop a couple of years ago. Um, but a friend and neighbor saw the amaranth plant growing and she was like, what is that? Like, that looks very familiar. And I told her it's amaranth. She's like, no, that looks like something that um, that my family used to grow and eat. And I'm like, no, this is just a flower. Like, but you see these flowers, and my flowers were green. I'm going to show it to you in just a second. My flowers, my little tendrils, these things that are supposed to be red, they were actually kind of like yellow and green. I don't know if that meant something was wrong with my soil or what. But my point is, I deliberately planted that. When the season was over, I pulled it up. Throughout the winter, that was in the summertime, throughout the winter, I kept seeing these little things pop up, and I was like, what is this? And a lot of times when things pop up, I let them continue to grow just because I want to see what it actually is. Is that a weed, or is that something that I planted that, just kind of self-sowed? Because if that's the case, I'm going to leave it let it grow. Y'all, each one of these little flowers, first of all, this, yes, it's amaranth, but it's also callaloo. I made the best callaloo last year, and I'm using it now as like spinach because amaranth loves the heat. Spinach doesn't do so well here because it's too hot. So I use that as a spinach substitute along with chard and perpetual spinach. But anyway, that's another story. Um, this loves the heat, and apparently now it has adapted to the cool weather. It's kind of chilly right now. I haven't been out in my garden like this in probably a week or so because it got really cold here. Cold for us, and my body needs to adjust. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I don't like the cold. I have to adjust. It takes me a couple of days. So anyway, it's growing still, and I want to show y'all. Like I said, I grew this the first year over on the other side of the garden, and I had babies popping up everywhere, even into this year. Then this year, I had a baby pop up. I had a baby pop up like it was right here. And of course, it was dropping seeds everywhere. So this whole area, I think I talked about this last time, this whole area was an amaranth plant that was not doing well. So I pulled it up, of course, planted my onions over here, pulled up all the nutsedge, which again is a weed, but in some cultures they actually eat the nutsedge. I'm not gonna eat that, but anyway, it was right there. Pulled it up, thought I pulled up all the babies. I planted beets right here, you guys. Excuse my shadow. There were beets here. None of these are beets. These are all amaranth plants. Let me show you. See, can you see this little grain right here? That's supposed to be the flower, and that's how the big ones, that's how all of the quote unquote flowers were looking. This is invasive for me. This would be a weed for me. And so basically, normally I would pull this up, all of it. But what I do instead is I pull up the ones that are struggling, leave the strongest, and I let that one grow because it's not a weed. It's actually food. Now, the other thing about weeds is, like I said, a lot of times they're invasive and they're hard to get rid of. Look at that. All of that is the amaranth. I did not plant that here. Like I said, I planted beet seeds here. So much for the beets. If we go down here to the other side of my garden, I'm going to show you. So this is, like I said, originally where I wanted to grow the amaranth. I had one planted right here and one planted right there. There's my access to the lake, the gate that has access to the lake. So I wanted it to, and even if it climbed, I was just going to kind of like try to drape it up and over and have them look real cute and all. Did not do that. Best laid plans, right? It did not do that. So anyway, but the seeds were all in this bed. Like, this bed was all tomatoes, and I was just finding baby amaranth plants all throughout this bed. Here's another example. This right here, these were all, this is like a lettuce mix that I put in here. I don't know what that is. That almost looks like an eggplant. But here we go again. These are all amaranth plants. So, I mean, they just grow like mad, and they self-sow. Now, here's something that I'm bad at. I'll pull these out. They're very shallow rooted. I'll pull them out, and because I'm right here lakeside, I'll just throw them out there. Let me show y'all something. This is outside of my gate. That's amaranth that I just tossed out there. Let's see if it's gonna focus. Yeah, there you go. I just tossed it out there, and it rooted and is growing. I'm sorry for the extra work for the gardeners, but that's what happened. So I'm not doing that anymore. But I am trying my best to keep the amaranth in check and to keep just enough that I want to keep. So you just saw me pull this little baby up, right? This right here doesn't look like much. I pulled up one of these, and there you can see that tip. So that tip In some countries, they actually let it grow and it becomes a grain. So you can eat the whole plant, the stem, the leaves, everything. I pulled up one similar to this and just came over here in this corner of the bed and laid it down on the ground. And it was completely wilted, completely flat. And then I came out here the other day and it was standing upright like this. Like, it's gonna grow. It wants to grow. Plants want to grow. Back to my point about the weeds. Like I said before, I think it's really important to be careful about what we consider a weed. Um, it could actually be something that is edible and very, very delicious. It could be something that is medicinal, something like stinging nettle, which is really good for you. It's great actually for your skin and your hair. Ask me how I know. I have made some formulations with the stinging nettle. You just have to be careful how you handle it. Um, I always say like weeds are kind of like people. Some, they may not belong in certain circles, and so just be judicious about what you keep and what you let go of, and be judicious about how much of it you keep on hand or keep around. Just keep things in check. I mean, it's no different than our relationships, right? Some people are good for us, others are only good for us in doses, others are not good for us at all, but they are good for somebody else. So just keep that in mind whenever you see something growing. There's so many apps out there that will identify plants for you, even Google Lens. Just take a picture of it, see what it is, do a little bit of research. And if you just hate the way it looks, fine, pull it. Don't worry about it. But, if it's something that can naturally be helpful to you or someone in your family or to your friends, or if it's something that you don't necessarily like that amaranth, I didn't know I could cook it. And I should have known because I love to cook. I love to try all different things. So I should have known I could just try it. But I didn't until that one neighbor and friend, and then another friend came by and saw it, and she was like, "Girl, this is callaloo. We eat this in Jamaica all the time. This is this dish and that dish." And I was just like, "Really? I had no idea. I thought this was just a flower." And then when it started to pop up all over my garden, I thought it was a weed. Girl, no. If you don't want it, let just harvest it, and I'll come get it. Let me have it. You see, I might not have liked it, but she loved it. She grew up with it. So just be very careful, be very judicious about what you say is bad and good, what is a weed and what is not a weed. And like I said, use those apps, use Google Lens to take pictures of what's in your garden and find out what's growing there. Now, I will always say that if you find something growing there that you have never grown before, it's just random. I probably would not eat that. I probably would pull it with gloves and be done with it simply because you don't know what it is. It could be poisonous. And don't eat mushrooms out of your yard. That goes without saying. But anyway, in the same way, some plants just are not going to grow in your zone. And so the same principle applies. For me, it's spinach. Spinach won't grow for me in my garden. Don't feel compelled to plant something and try to grow it, try to force it because you saw somebody else doing it. Find an alternative instead. The alternative for me in this particular example is what others might consider a weed, the amaranth. Same goes for people. Some people may not be able to grow with you, to be in your zone. So be judicious. Find like minded people. Find things that do work instead of trying to force something that doesn't work or prevent something that will. Work with what you have, work with what grows in your zone. That's all I really wanted to talk to you guys about today, was just weeds in the garden that are not actually weeds in the garden. You guys, thanks again for tuning in. Oh, by the way, I did want to say this. I do record my videos in a vertical now that YouTube will show vertical videos full screen. If you don't know how to do that, there's just like going to be like a little square box in the bottom, what is that, the bottom right hand of your screen. Just tap on it and it will show me in all my glory, full screen. So anyway, if you don't prefer vertical video, let me know. I mean, I have some that are horizontal, and I'm kind of experimenting with what you guys like the most. So just let me know that down in the comments, and let me know if you have discovered some weeds in your garden that you actually love. Until next time, you guys, like this video if you like this video, and thank you so much for tuning in to my channel where we're not quite homesteading, but we're pretty darn close.